Spider-Man 4 is arguably the most anticipated upcoming MCU project. No Way Home took the franchise to new heights in a multiversal masterpiece, wiping the slate clean for the next decade of storytelling. Peter Parker is now at his absolute lowest point in life with no friends, no family, no bitches, no known existence whatsoever, and Spider-Man fans couldn't be happier. It sets up a really intriguing movie as Peter is forced to restart his life, all while continuing to be that friendly neighborhood Spider-Man knows he has to, just now in a more grounded story than ever. And that sounds great, right? Well, what if Sony decided to do what they're best at and run another Spider-Man franchise into the ground, all in an attempt to make more money? Right now, there's an internal struggle going on between Sony and Marvel Studios as they try and sort out the fate of Spider-Man 4. After the success of No Way Home, Sony wants it to be another multiverse movie that includes Tobey and Andrew, while Feige is pushing for it to be a street-level Spider-Man story that takes the character in new directions. These two conflicting visions cannot coexist, and it's obvious which one is better, and I'll give you a hint. It's not the one from the studio who released Morbius twice in theaters. Now, don't get me wrong, I love No Way Home. It's my favorite live-action Spider-Man movie by a mile, but what makes it so special is that it was a once-in-a-lifetime event that brought together the big three Spider-Man. Running that back, especially in the very next movie, would be a huge mistake that not only makes it feel less significant, but also backtracks on the new direction for MCU Peter's character. Time and time again, Sony has tried to strong-arm their universe of Marvel characters into the MCU to try and leech off of its success. We saw this with Morbius' deceptive trailer editing and how they kidnapped the Vulture, and now they want to do it again with Madam Web and more multiversal shenanigans. I don't care what I have to do to make sure this doesn't happen, but I'll do it. Spider-Man 4 needs to be a street-level movie that puts Peter's loneliness at the forefront. The multiversal scale of No Way Home can't be topped, so it's not even worth trying to do. Instead, focusing on the street level can work by grounding the stakes in emotion as Peter's trying to move on from his past life and protect a city that doesn't care for him. This would include a brand new supporting cast to reinforce the new life he has to live. Neb was a great guy in the chair for the Home trilogy, but I don't think we should see him anymore outside of maybe a brief cameo. But MJ is different, as it's already been heavily rumored that Zendaya is returning, which, in my opinion, is a good thing. I think she needs to be a part of the story to show how far Peter has come, but she can't remember who he is just yet. Having Peter secretly watch over her would be a great way to show that he still cares about MJ, but he's scared to let her back into his life because he doesn't want to see her get hurt again. That doesn't mean his love life is going to get put on hold though, as in this movie I think Peter should have a fling with Black Cat. This is by far the best time to introduce her when he's at his lowest and putting all of his time into Spider-Man. She can personify his toxic relationship with crime fighting and help him realize over the course of the movie that he needs to put more effort into being Peter Parker again. So, if Peter is putting everything he has into being Spider-Man, the best way to ground the stakes is to threaten him with losing that identity as well. Enter the Kingpin. Echo has already set the stage for his mayoral run, which can only lead to one thing: an adaptation of Devil's Reign. This 6-part comic event takes place after Mayor Fisk has outlawed vigilantism and painted New York's heroes as criminals. It's the perfect story for Peter at this point because not only does it finally get him involved with one of his oldest villains, but it sets up the stakes perfectly. At this point in his life, all he has is Spider-Man with nothing to fall back on. Peter has been given this great responsibility, and Fisk is doing everything in his power to prevent him from acting on that for his own selfish reasons. An angry Spider-Man is the last thing anyone wants to deal with, and Fisk might just bring the worst out of Peter as he fights to protect what he has left. The most exciting part about all of this, of course, is that it could lead to us finally getting to see Spider-Man and Daredevil team up in live action. They work so well together because they both know what it's like to keep secrets from the ones they love most, and for that reason they don't even want to know the other's identity. As masked vigilantes, they'll both have the motive to work together and take out Fisk to keep those lives intact. It'll also be interesting to see their dynamic play out as Peter is at his lowest and Matt is at his happiest. Usually it's the other way around since Daredevil isn't allowed to be happy for more than 5 minutes at a time, but now he's going to be the one supporting Peter. Matt knows how dangerous the Kingpin can be, and he can act as a guide to make sure Peter doesn't go down the dark path he nearly did. Now that Peter is all alone, he's going to have a lot of resentment and rage and grief that I think should be explored in this movie. And while Daredevil, as we saw in seasons 1 through 3, was in a really bad place, season 3 left him off in a much happier position. And I think that the MCU take is going to be a much more lighthearted take on the character. And seeing that version of Daredevil interact with a grief-stricken Spider-Man, it's really interesting to me. And I think that dynamic almost being turned on its head in this movie would be a lot of fun to watch play out. In the comic story, Fisk has a team of villains act as his own private police force. I think that this can be changed to fit the MCU a little more and have Fisk hire criminals to do his dirty work now that he's the mayor. This could be a great way to introduce more iconic Spider-Man villains into live action that haven't made that jump yet, starting with finally paying off the Scorpion post-credit scene in Homecoming. He should be the secondary antagonist of this movie, working under Fisk and provide a more physical challenge for Peter. I'd also love to see characters like Tombstone and Hammerhead in the movie. Both of those characters are heads of different crime organizations, and seeing them fill the void of power that the Kingpin left could make for a really interesting story, and they both have this unique, almost indestructible power set that I think watching Spider-Man go up against would be interesting because he's so used to having to hold back against other characters that when he can just let go and the person doesn't feel anything, it could make for a really unique fight sequence. Kingpin should still be the overarching villain of the entire movie, but he should only fight when it's a last resort. These villains can act as a line of defense and add some variety to the film's action scenes. There's also been a few rumors that Marvel wants to make this the street-level equivalent of Civil War, culminating the Kingpin story that's been building up throughout Hawkeye, Echo, Born Again, and then Spider-Man 4, and if that's going to be the case, I think it would be a great idea to bring other heroes like Kate Bishop's Hawkeye and Echo into the movie. They both have a history with Fisk, and as resident New York City superheroes, it would make sense for them to stand up to the new mayor alongside Spider-Man and Daredevil. They don't have to have as big of roles as the other two, but it would help to make the world feel more alive as the city's heroes are being threatened. It can turn this into the big Devil's Reign event that it should be and add more depth to the story. It also adds contrast between the heroes, as Kate and Maya don't have secret identities like Peter and Matt do, and can reinforce the idea that Peter doesn't want to let people know who he is anymore. Going forward, the secret identity needs to be a huge aspect of MCU Spider-Man. It's where most of the drama comes from in his stories, and now that Peter knows the consequences of letting his identity out, he should avoid it at all costs. And one final rumor I just wanted to mention said that Ant-Man has been tossed around as a potential character to appear in the movie, and while at first that didn't really make sense to me, the more I thought about it, I think he'd really help to emphasize Peter's story in the film. As an Avenger with all the fame and glory of being a publicly known superhero, Scott represents the life that Peter turned down. He can offer Spider-Man a way back into that world and kind of tempt him towards the life he used to live, with everybody knowing who he was and enjoying the fame that comes with being Spider-Man, but ultimately turn it down to show how far he's come. As long as Peter's still the main character, I think adding in all these other characters can really work to tie all the themes of the movie together. With Peter at his lowest in this movie, I think there's a really unique opportunity to have him rebuild that Peter Parker persona. Black Cat's going to exist in there because their dynamic in the comics is really special, and they have this push and pull between each other where Peter knows he can't be with her because of the life she wants to live, but he wants to help her out and quote-unquote fix her, while she's trying to pull him into being a vigilante full-time, and it's not a healthy relationship. While it might be great for Peter to save lives as Spider-Man all the time, if he was Spider-Man 24/7, it would break him mentally and physically. He would have nothing by the end of the day. And I think throughout the course of the movie, if his arc focused on learning that he needed to rebuild that identity and he can't just push it aside again, it would be a really nice way to look at this character in a perspective we haven't seen before. There's been a lot of focus on the double life, but I think showing that Peter Parker can be just as effective at helping the world as Spider-Man can is a really great direction for this trilogy. I think focusing on identity in this movie is a really great way to take the character, because you have Kingpin on one side trying to take away that identity, that all he has left, and Black Cat is trying to push him towards that. And by the end of the movie, when Kingpin is, say, behind bars, or however he gets away again, whatever Marvel want to do with the character, I hope he stays around, because Vincent D'Onofrio just kills it in that role. But you need to have it at a point where at the end of the movie, Peter realizes, okay, I need to put work into being Peter Parker again. There is a balance between Spider-Man and Peter Parker so that he can live a life while also helping the world. And I think a great way to do that would be by the end of the movie, Peter enrolls himself in college again. He goes to Empire State University like he does in the comics, and this is where you can introduce characters for the next two movies like Harry Osborn and Gwen Stacy. Obviously, they're some of the most iconic characters in the Spider-Man mythology, and setting them up for the future would show Peter starting to open himself up to the possibility of friendship and relationship again, and I think that is the direction you want to take this trilogy. Also, a quick side note, but Marvel has a tendency to change costumes between movies to boost toy sales, and I'm begging them not to change that final swimsuit. It's the best live-action Spider-Man to date, and it's not even close. I need Peter to keep this as his main costume for the entire trilogy. The shining blues contrasting the hand-sewn red parts of the suit, and keeping the old eyes, it just goes so hard. I want to see that costume in action scenes as he gets ripped apart and as he gets pummeled and then he just repairs it himself. I would marry this suit if I could. It's everything to me, and if they take it away, I'm ending it all, alright? I just need this suit to stay the entire trilogy. Spider-Man 4 has the potential to be a hit just like No Way Home was, but in its own unique way that utilizes the story beats the MCU has set up to this point. The pieces are all in place to have Peter fight the Kingpin in a war over responsibility itself, and those grounded emotional stakes could feel massive if handled correctly. The clean slate for MCU Spider-Man has made it so there's an endless world of possibilities for the wall crawler, but I think adapting Devil's Reign is the best way to take advantage of the scenario he's in right now. Doing a true character study of Peter Parker when he's at his worst mentally is a situation we haven't seen in live action before, and it's a great new direction to take the character. Just please don't let Sony get involved. I'm on my hands and knees begging. There's nothing I want less than to see Sony ruin this movie. They've already destroyed 2 previous Spider-Man universes, and if they ruin the MCU's version, I'm making the national news. We can't let the people who made Morbius and broke 2 directors have control again. Everything is lined up for an amazing street-level Spider-Man movie, and I hope Marvel is able to make the movie they want and does the character justice.
Wish me luck. Your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man could really use some.